Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to Q&A. I was just smiling to myself because a number of times when I've done recordings, either live as we are here or recordings for the various things that I'm involved in, for some reason, every time the cameraman, after he plucks up some courage, will say to me, Ustad, why do you try doing that again, but this time smiling a little bit? So, and I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, it's just, you seem very, sort of very blank-faced, very passive-faced. But yet off camera, you're such a jovial fella. And I said, yeah, I know, it's just one of them things. So I just remembered that. So I thought I'd share a smile with you. So, I'll try my best to smile. I don't know why when you're sort of sat in front of a camera, you kind of lose all your normal human traits and qualities, and you kind of feel like you just got to talk to the camera without being casual. Maybe it's just that we've got to be professional. But you can smile and be professional. Anyway, that's a side issue. I totally forgot to remind you that this is Q&A. So if you do have any questions, please do call them in. It is on 01274 214 299. Look at that. He's saying it now, rolling off my tongue. That's 01274 214 299. Any questions that you have, whether to do with Salah times, which is what I'm discussing today, or anything else for that matter. It doesn't have to be related to this. And also, because we're approaching Rajab and the schedule changes slightly, then also if there's any questions that you've got regarding Ramadan and the issue of fasting and the rest of it, or anything else that's associated with Ramadan, even if you have some zakah questions as well. I will hopefully, inshallah, I will hopefully next week dedicate the 3 sessions to Q&A around Ramadan. So at least you can be sort of, prepped up, ready to go, so that you've got the answers already, so to speak. And then, you can have a more productive Ramadan rather than when the situation befalls you and then you're trying to get hold of somebody, trying to get hold of a scholar to ask them the question about the particular situation that you're in. So anyway, let's move on. So I think we've talked in great detail about Tulu al-Fajr. And I've also put to you the situations and the scenarios which make things a little bit difficult. Again, living on the island that we live, and unfortunately the high level of light pollution that exists, and it's not just limited to the UK, light pollution is found everywhere now. So what about Isha? Now, Isha is a similar scenario, to be honest. There will be the same problems on that end of it. So what do we do? I was hopefully going to present you with some solutions. What do we do? One thing I do want to touch upon, though, is the view that we see that there will be, obviously, Isha time, that there will be a time when the Isha light can be seen to disappear. Now, remember, with Fajr, the light is appearing. With Isha, the light is disappearing. So you'll see across the horizon kind of, reds and oranges and then yellows, okay? Probably in reverse order now that I'm thinking about it, but whichever order it is, the Roig Biv, Richard of York, gave battle in vain. As the light is stretching and then the wavelength that you're picking the light up on, you're seeing those different colors across on the horizon. Then slowly it becomes white light, and then eventually it disappears, okay, until there is no light on the horizon. And that happens in winter where there's no light on the horizon and we see absolute darkness looking across the horizon. Now remember, all of this is the movement of the sun, which is what I initiated on yesterday, that we can see the movement of the sun during the day. So we stick something in the ground for noon, and as long as the sun has just come away from, so if you had a stick in the ground and the sun was directly above, then literally there'd be no shadow, because the shadow of the stick is in on itself, if you know what I mean. It's only when you start to see a shadow forming that Zawal has taken place, that the sun has moved from that point, and now Dhuhr time can start. How long should Dhuhr last? Well, we see the Fuqaha speak of the length of the stick and its shadow. So kind of double the stick, or it's got the length of the stick and 2 of its shadows. So obviously the sun is now setting, so the shadows get longer. When it was just above and it just moved slightly, then it had a very small shadow. But then as the sun is continuing to set now, then the shadows are getting longer and longer. So according to some, the Asr time starts earlier, and according to others, the Asr time starts late. Maghrib is easy, well, relatively easy, because that's when the sun is setting, and we've had the discussion yesterday about the refraction and everything else associated with it. Today we're going to obviously concentrate on Fajr and Isha. So Isha has the same problems. But Isha has another problem that Fajr doesn't have. Every morning Fajr starts. There's never a morning in the year that Fajr doesn't start. It starts in every morning. However, there are some months in the year in which Isha does not occur. So what do you mean it does not occur? What I mean by that is the light doesn't disappear. The light is still in the sky on the western horizon, and it won't go. It just will not disappear. Why? Because, as we've mentioned, it is the sun's movements that causes the salah times. Now I know, before somebody calls in and says, actually it's not the sun's movement, it's the earth that's going around the sun. Yes, that's absolutely correct. I did a little bit of physics in school. That's absolutely correct. That's exactly what's happening. However, from our observational point, we look out at the sun, and in our eyes, in our mind, it's the sun that's moving. So I'm not talking about the physical reality. I'm talking it from the point of view of the human on the earth, not the point of view of somebody outside the kind of, on our Milky Way, looking into our Milky Way and seeing what's going on. I was just tempted then to crack a chocolate joke, but I'll refrain from doing so. So if somebody looking in at the Milky Way will see that the earth is going around the sun. Clearly, the sun is obviously spinning on its axis. Somebody even looking outside our Milky Way will see that our Milky Way is also going around as well. So there's so much going on on the universe. It's actually mind-boggling to the level of movement and things happening. And then you kind of think, goodness me, we're not even a speck of dust in all of this. And yet, when we land on this speck of dust, look at the remarkable things which are occurring on there. Anyway, I digress. So when we look out at the sky, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing this movement of the sun. So there are some times when the sun does not set far enough. Because to give you an example, okay, if you've got the sun, and here's the sun coming across here, okay, and there's a person stood looking across the horizon. So the person stood here looking that way across the horizon. Here's the sun. This is the noon time. It's just gone a little bit there now as Zuhr time has started. Then obviously Asr time has started. Then the sun sets, Maghrib time starts. Now the sun continues to go down. The sun has to reach a certain point, probably somewhere down here, when you will get complete darkness in that part of the sky. When you get complete darkness, because even when the sun is here, there's still some light coming from it, which is still visible on the horizon. When the sun has reached all the way down here, now it's pitch black. Okay, Isha time can start, because for some, we wait for the redness to disappear, and for some, we wait for the whiteness to disappear. Once that has disappeared by the movement of the sun, then Isha time starts. There are periods in the year where that doesn't happen. There are periods in the year where that does not happen, particularly in the summer months. Okay, for about 3 months or so, 4 months, that does not happen. Now, some people object to that. They say, what are you on about? How can you not have Isha time? That's never, ever, ever happened. You must always have Isha time. Absolutely. When we look to the Middle East, when we look to the time of the Prophet of Allah, there's no record of no Isha time. There's always been, or, well, we assume there's always been, because you'd have expected some record of no Isha time. And similarly, when Islam spread beyond Medina, beyond Mecca, and went into Sham, Syria, Greater Syria, and even into Iraq and places like that, there's no record within our legacy of anyone saying that there was no Isha time. However, there was a place which has been recorded in our books of fiqh, which is referred to as Bulghar. Okay, Bulghar. And I made some effort to find where Bulghar is, and I located Bulghar, and Bulghar is found to be, it's actually still called Bolgar, Bolgar, in Russia. And this is situated on the Volga River. Now, when some individuals went to this place called Bulgar, they describe it as being extremely cold. So clearly you can see they have headed into a northern climate. They said it's extremely cold, and there's hardly any time difference between the Maghrib Salah and the Fajr Salah. It's virtually almost instantaneous. There's hardly any time. So clearly that historical record proves that there are or have been times when no Isha has existed. It's only that we don't see them in the early books because Islam was pretty much located near the border, near the equator. It's when Islam spread into northern territories. Oh, mashallah, as you can see on the screen, look at that. Fantastic. I'm absolutely impressed with that. So you can see that on the screen. It will hopefully be pointed out to you by some mouse there. There you go. And this is the extremities of where they'd reached. And when they reached here, these individuals, there's a particular scholar there as well, he then records this in his books that he's carrying with him. And he mentions in there that when I reached this particular point, that I noticed that there was hardly any time between Maghrib and Fajr. It was as though no Isha existed. Now that shows clearly that when there was no artificial light, or when there was no artificial lighting, when there was no light pollution, then it reached a point where the light continued to stay on the western horizon even after the sun had set, which meant Isha did not come in. Those people who've carried out observations, the mushahada that's been carried out in the UK, they continue to see, or what they perceive to see, the light continuing to disappear, and therefore they assume that Isha time existed. When you look at the, I forget the term for this, when you look at the latitude, the coordinates, that's the word I'm looking for. When you look at the coordinates of Bulghar, you'll see that the coordinates are N 58 degrees, which is north 58 degrees, and east 49 degrees. That's what the coordinates are. They may have been on the map that just came up. And when we look at UK's coordinates, then UK from the bottom to the top of Scotland, is 50 to 59 degrees north. So in essence, Bulghar is where roughly Scotland is. So that means that Scotland has certain days where there's no night is visible at all. When further work is done, we find that any location above 48 degrees approximately will miss out on Isha for a certain number of days in the year. The further obviously north, the more days they will miss. And this is obviously around the summertime when the days are longest. So we're doing Maghrib at 9:45, 9:50. And then you see some people praying Isha at 10:30 when you've actually prayed, it even goes against logic that you've prayed Dhuhr at 1:30, 2 o'clock. Asr you've prayed at, 6, 7 o'clock. Maghrib you've prayed at 9:30. And then Isha you're praying at 10 or 10:30. You think, hold on a second here, there's like 7, 8 hours gap between each prayer. And suddenly there's like an hour gap. The only reason why there's an hour gap is because we're running out of night. Because Fajr is going to start soon. So we think we're going to have Isha somewhere. So let's have it here. So you can see these are the issues that the ulama here in the UK and in northern countries. In fact, I'm in discussions with ulama in Norway at the moment who are suffering similar scenarios. In fact, the further north you go, they have literally 6 months of day and 6 months of night. So they're going to have to do something. It's not that they can say, okay, we've got a day, our day is 12 months long. So we're going to pray one Fajr in that, one Dhuhr in that, one Asr in that, one Maghrib in that, then, not even a Maghrib. So for the first 6 months, we're just going to pray the Dhuhr and Asr prayer. And then when the first night occurs, we'll pray Maghrib prayer. And then we'll pray Isha and Fajr in the next 6 months, and that's it. 5 salahs, we're done. No, that doesn't work like that. What they'd have to do is obviously divide up the 24 hours appropriately and then pray each salah, even though the asbab, the causes for the prayers don't exist. We know what the asbab are. The asbab are the movements of the sun. But if the sun is not going to move for 6 months, if it's going to stay in exactly the same point in the sky, then obviously the asbab are not there. So some would argue that there's no salah at all, because how can you pray Maghrib when the sun hasn't set? How can you pray Dhuhr when Zawal hasn't occurred? How can you pray Asr when the shadow is not twice its length? How can you do these things? So we have to then divide it up. But we're talking about in scenarios where this is not happening. So you can see, okay, that there is historical evidence that sometimes Isha does not exist. And that place, which was shown to you just now, that place is roughly where the UK is sited right now. Obviously on the other side of the earth, but in roughly the same place. So this is what leads now the fuqaha to start to look at, we need some astronomical phenomenon in order, or astronomical phenomena in order to decide at what points we're going to, because we just can't use mushahada. Unfortunately, the light pollution is so high, it's just not going to give us accurate figures. Therefore, what we need to do is eliminate basically the light pollution. The only way you can eliminate the light pollution is to rely on astronomical phenomena, which is something that is repeatable, something that which occurs and has been proven by physicists. So what do we do? Well, we find that, and this is where the whole concept of degrees comes in. You know, all these maths terms that you hated when you were at school, suddenly we're talking degrees again. That, you know, the sun has to be 10 degrees below the horizon, or the sun has to be 12 degrees below the horizon, or the sun has to be 15 degrees below the horizon, or 18 degrees below the horizon. And then people use short terms like, are you a 15 degreeer or an 18 degreeer? You know, or are you a 12 degree, or are you a no degreeer? So then we start to associate, when do you get absolute darkness? We find you get absolute darkness at 18 degrees. It's astronomical twilight, there's absolute pitch black. That only occurs when you hit 18 degrees. However, you can also get the other type of twilight at 15 degrees. So you find that these two positions correlate nicely, okay? They correlate nicely with the redness of the sky disappearing and the whiteness of the sky disappearing. So you can now correlate these astronomical terms. These figures are easily available from HMNAO, where you can get the 18 degrees or the 15 degrees and use them to plot your salah times. This could be the same for Fajr, and this would be the same for Isha. Once you've got them, those are the ones you will use, and those are the ones you will practice upon. Some people you find have still stuck to the mushahada, and they're using that data that was gathered in the poor way that I've explained it to you, and feel it's significant enough to carry out the prayer. Others have used a figure that just seems like a nice number to add to the end, i.e. the Maghrib time, as a sort of a formulaic way, and that is a method that's used all the time. Others, however, who've taken a more scientific, a more in-depth understanding, have realized that it's these type of phenomena that we need to associate the prayer times to. So they will produce timetables where they will take the 15 degrees and they will tell us what time we should, or when we should pray Isha. That still doesn't solve the problem of when in certain months there is no Isha at all. What are we supposed to do then? Well, when there's no Isha at all, then there's a number of solutions the fuqaha offer. Some say you would just sort of split the night up, or what would constitute our night, even though night technically hasn't occurred, and you will pray your Isha then as late as possible. So maybe 11 o'clock, 11:15, 11:30. That would be one solution. And that seems to be the best solution available, that you would just have to estimate. Leading up to that, and also coming out from that, there has been some ikhtilaf of how one can do that. Meaning, as the night still exists, Isha still exists at 11, half 11, quarter to 12, what should be the scenario there? So that, in a nutshell, okay, is why we see different Subh Sadiq times, Suhoor times, and why we see different Taraweeh times. That's the whole basis of it. Question still remains, what should you do? What do you do in those circumstances? Well, we seem to give educated opinions about Islam on other matters, but when it comes to something like this, we say, well, we don't really know. Well, you do know, because the research I'm explaining to you is available on our website, which is www.irtis.org.uk. That is irtis.org.uk, which stands for the Institute for the Revival of Traditional Islamic Sciences. On there you will see this paper, which is talking about the prayer times. There's numerous other works on there as well, but this is the particular one that I'm speaking about. Read it. Read it again. Try to understand what it's saying. Look at the arguments. Come to it with an open mind. Okay, don't come with a closed mind, already in a view to reject whatever you read, but try to engage with it. Once you've engaged with it and it makes sense to you, then fine. Find that masjid that acts on that timetable and follow that. If, however, it doesn't make sense to you, or it's a bit, you think it's too technical, then continue to follow your local area, but don't challenge those people who choose not to do that if they have educated themselves in this particular subject matter. Because in every area there is expertise required. And before one comments, one should be well read and also be experienced and possess the necessary skills and qualifications to be able to respond. By just talking whatever comes inside your head, that obviously is not a good way to engage with a matter which is of religious importance, and of such a religious importance that it impacts on our prayer and it impacts on our fasting. And obviously this is absolutely essential. And if I throw in the moon sighting discussion that we had a few days ago, then that's also when you should fast and when you should be celebrating Eid. So these are absolute key issues. And the reason why I've touched upon them now is, for now, nobody's really interested, unfortunately. We only become interested when something literally lands on our lap. But come the day before Ramadan, or on Ramadan itself, this will be the topic of the day. When at that time, you are supposed to be concentrating on your worship and engaging with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not when should Ramadan start? Why is yours started today? Why did ours start yesterday? When did you make your suhoor? How come you made your suhoor at 3 o'clock and we made it at 1:30? What time did you pray your tarawih? I prayed them at 10:30. You prayed them at 11:15. That's not the time now for those discussions or debate. That's gone now. Okay, that opportunity was there now. Whilst we still have whatever remains of Rajab, we still have the full of Sha'ban. So we've got plenty of time to mull over these things, understand them, discuss them, and even get an opportunity to call in. I know people haven't called in today. Maybe they've been so engrossed in listening to today's topic that they're just taking the message on board. But then we've also got next week, and even during Rajab, even though we will be scheduling things for other matters, there will still be the opportunity to ring in and give your questions and hope to expect some answers. So mull this over the weekend. Think about the start of the month, Islamic month. How do you start yours? Think about how the salah times are. Think about when you make suhoor compared to your friends, your neighbors, your relatives, and apply some time and energy to try to find something which is sound practice. You have 6 weeks. It is of no importance now. In fact, this is the time for discussion. This is the time to engage with scholars. This is the time to engage with your family members. Starting of Ramadan or after Ramadan, it is no point whatsoever. There is no use. That is a time of worship. That is a time of solitude. And that is a time of introspection and self-reflection. It is not the time for debates of, when should the hilal be, shouldn't. And we see the usual jokes going around and poking fun at scholars and all the rest of it. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your energy. You're wasting your opportunity that Allah is giving to you, because you may not be around for next Ramadan. So those are essential. I hope, inshallah ta'ala, as we bring today to a close, well, not today to a close, but today's session to a close, that you can join me again next week, same time, same place, on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. And also you can join my colleague on Monday and Tuesday. No favoritism there. I'm sure he's equally, if not better, in his presentation. And then obviously I am on the Wednesday, Thursday and Friday. If you do have any questions, the number, just you can scribble it down now, is 01274 214 299. I look forward to seeing you again, inshallah. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.